You're listening to the Worst of the Worst podcast. With me is Maddie and John. Today we're going to be discussing the worst decade. This is our first recording since we've published our episodes, since we've gone live. How are you guys feeling about that?
I'm a little bit disappointed I'm not rich and famous yet.
Nobody's recognized me.
Yeah, I haven't been mauled in the streets yet by hordes of raging fans.
Not even one interruption. Not even one.
No one's asked me to sign a tit yet. I've always wanted to sign a tit. Sign my own tits. It doesn't count. I can't write in the mirror backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I always catch you writing on your nipples.
And they're so small as well, dude. It's a very small target.
I never wanted to ask him about it.
No.
Thank you. I appreciate your discretion.
Sometimes, can't you?
The permanent marker comes through onto my white shirt.
Yeah.
So seeing as we're talking about worst decade, before we get into that, what's your vote for best decade? What do you think would be the best time to live in? Like, not now, but like in history. Which decade would you have wanted to be alive in?
60s sounds good, doesn't it?
Why?
Free love, all the music. Just seems like an interesting time to be alive.
Maybe
if you were young.
Yeah, maybe in England.
What's wrong with the States?
You get sent to Vietnam to die.
Yeah.
That and the hippie movements are related, aren't they? Like, that's
totally.
Partly a protest thing.
I would agree. But if you're in London, you don't have that same... It's just more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff, right?
Yeah, it would have been worse. It would have been worse to be in America.
You mean, and all the best bands are British anyway.
They are.
You know, especially from that time period.
But it doesn't seem like the hippie movement was the same in England as it was in America. But I know that's a small section in that, but like the festivals and San Francisco and all that just seems to be the place
and
to be.
rooms were super smoky. That looks like my scene.
I think a lot of it is just hype, bro.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I've been to Haight-Ashbury a number of times. I'm from the area, right? And it's just gross, man.
Was it always gross?
Dirty. I imagine so. I imagine you've always had a lot of people, sleeping in alcoves of buildings, and it's not. I don't know what it was like in the 60s, but a lot of that stuff gets like...
Because you were born in the 70s.
I was born in the 70s, right. So I just missed the party. I just missed the party, and I was bitter about it.
You just got there when everything was fucking brown and grey.
Right.
Shit.
Right. Carter was president. Oil prices were skyrocketing.
Yeah. Americans that lost faith in the government.
As you would, after the debacle with Nixon. So yeah, it was a pretty rough time to be there. Thank God for disco, man.
Yeah.
Thank God. Saved us all.
That saved it,
more than we want to admit.
Yeah, I look at the 60s and the 20s as like just kind of interesting times. Seems like things were changing. Do you know what I mean? People were getting a bit more modern.
Big cultural changes, though. Is the 20s like the gangster era?
The roaring 20s, isn't it? Yeah, the gangster era, with Al Capone and that kind of thing, yeah.
I think to be older in the 90s, I was alive in the 90s, as were we all.
I was a wee toddler.
Yeah, I don't remember it well.
Yeah, I wasn't part of the cultural movement.
I was a child, but so I think to have been like in your 20s or 30s, I think that would have been ideal. That's the high water mark, before 9/11.
But at least you grew up like a decent child. No cell phones, no TV.
Everything's not, what.
You had TV, but you didn't have cell phones.
Things were getting better in South Africa, I imagine. In the early 90s.
I wasn't super aware of politics, and
it doesn't matter about being there. That's not the point. You weren't there in the 20s either.
That's fair.
That wasn't part of the argument then.
Yeah, you're just getting defensive.
Whenever you guys bring up South Africa, I put on my boxing gloves because I'm ready to defend, but it's usually quite polite, except you accusing us of using biltong as dental floss.
It's not an accusation. That's an observation.
That's a fact.
That's just accurate, yeah.
Seen you do it. I know what I saw.
Yeah, the 90s seemed like it had something going on. Standards of living were good.
The Simpsons is out.
Blair was in government. Everyone was positive.
Right. It's a time of like bad things shit hadn't hit the fan yet.
It been steady for a while.
Yeah. It's the end of history, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we have a comment from one of our listeners, Toast, and he says, "Loving the podcast, boys, but it's actually shocking how little Maddie knows about cricket."
Yeah, no, it is. I didn't pretend to know stuff, though. It's shit.
That's fair. You're willfully ignorant.
And I don't want to know any more about it. I know enough to know it's shit.
Toast just had high expectations for you.
Yeah, well, lesson learned there, innit? Yeah.
Sorry, Toast.
Sorry, but I don't want to learn more about cricket.
Now, most of our listeners are willing to go out of their way to re-educate you because a lot of them have voted for it as the best sport.
Have they, though?
Yeah, they have.
How many days was the Titanic in service.
2 hours and 45 minutes according to the blockbuster film by James Cameron.
Does it not sink before the end, Matt?
Okay, 2 hours 37 minutes, Maddie. Fuck you.
Maddie, do you remember how many days the Titanic was in? 5 days.
5 days. Okay.
Within 5 days of setting sail, it was at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
What a shit boat.
And that's how the 1910s
Kicked off.
It's to this day, it's still the biggest sinking of any cruise ship in peacetime, of course. Of course.
So just to clarify, the decade that you're talking about is
The 1910s.
Why do you think there's so much interest around the Titanic?
Because it's still the biggest, and because it's such a monument to man's hubris. It's such a like an idea that people love to see other people get taken down a peg, and I think that's what you saw here.
Because of the whole, it was unsinkable and that.
A lot of rich people were on board. It's a lot of money invested. You know, a lot of people jerking each other off, being so proud of being on this big old ship.
A monument to arrogance.
Right, a monument to arrogance, and then within 5 days, it's all over.
And at the time it was built and set sail, it was a huge event. Like, we're not just overhyping it now. It was massive.
A big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. It's hard to. It's like.
Not really a modern comparison.
There's not really a modern comparison. No, I guess the best thing is it'd be like if one of the rockets that they're launching off didn't work, you know, but like tragically and horribly, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like that would be maybe the closest equivalent.
There was a rocket that launched in South Africa a couple of years ago that barely made it fucking like 100 feet off the ground.
I'm surprised you guys are allowed to launch rockets. I'm surprised we have enough metal left in Africa to make a rocket. I'm surprised other countries haven't come in and been like, okay, we're just going to take these.
yeah. We'll just take these off you. Here's some scissors. Make sure you don't cut yourself.
Don't use all the glue stick at once, okay? Just squeeze out a little bit at a time like this. So anyways, the 1910s are my decade, right? The Titanic is we're just getting started. All right. So do you guys want civil wars first? We can go civil wars, all right. In 1910, Mexican Revolution starts, right? They think conservatively 1.9 to 3.5 million people died in the 7-year Mexican Revolution. So we got people in Mexico slaughtering each other. At the same time, we have people in Russia slaughtering each other. And we have people in China slaughtering each other, right?
Lots of slaughter.
So the Mexican Revolution, at the time at least, is very, very bloody. Whether it was a good thing or a bad thing
is irrelevant to our conversation today.
Irrelevant to the conversation. The Russian Revolution, in which conservatively 1.5 million combatants and 8 million civilians was this decade. So keep in mind, this is going to be on top of what the Russians already suffer previously.
Yeah.
World War I, which we'll talk about. At this time, also, the monarchy in China collapsed for the first time in thousands of years, right?
Is that not a good thing, though?
It began a period of instability in China, like the warlords that were prevalent before World War II. This is the time that starts as well.
Okay.
I mean, short-term political unrest is probably going to be bad for the people living through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1000%. And these weren't just, wasn't just political unrest. The one in China, I cannot really pronounce it, so I won't even try. I will try. Xinhai Revolution was not that bad compared to the Mexican and Russian Revolution. Thousands or millions of people were killed. But we know Maddie is pro-colonialism, and this was Maddie's decade.
False, yeah.
At the time, most of the world was under the colonial ilk. I believe France and Britain had
the world,
basically the world.
Yeah.
So if you were not part of France and Britain, things were pretty bad. Oh, or maybe Japan. In 1910, Japan annexed Korea. So maybe if you were Japanese, things were pretty good at the decade too. But for everybody else, you were being subjugated.
Yeah, the Europeans sound pretty bad.
I mean, it
the
does seem like
1910s.
being just completely brutal was just the standard rules of the day.
Standard rules of the day. Human rights didn't seem to have caught up. But the Europeans were slaughtering themselves. Basically, France decided to give everybody a gun and send them off to war. It seemed like a bad idea at the time, but you could fill out massive armies, right?
France brought in conscription before World War One.
Before World War One. And it started. So this started the idea of bringing tons of men into battle. Right?
Yeah.
Tons of men. At the same time, they had started building these weapons of absolute annihilation.
Yeah.
Machine guns, poison gas, landmines, and war had not caught up. People hadn't caught up. So you have this huge increase in available bodies and increase in killing capacity without the corresponding advancement of like military strategy or ethics.
Sure, yeah.
And you have just an absolute bloodbath.
Well, the first few months of World War One is like just people not having a clue what's going on. Like that, as you like just said, like the tactics haven't caught up with the technology. People are like
just getting annihilated,
like walking into machine guns.
Right? They didn't. They didn't know what they were fighting against for a very long time. The amount of slaughter is insane. They think in the Battle of Somme in 1916. They were losing 70,000 men a month.
A month?
A month in this one battle over about 10 months.
So that's 700,000 people.
Yeah.
The math adds
and
up.
that's just over the course of one battle. That's one valley on this front, in a wider, just an absolute meat grinder.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Those statistics are actually frightening.
After all that, on a pig farm, they document the first case of a flu, which comes to be called the Spanish flu. Now, this flu, it kills, they think, conservatively, on the conservative end, 17 million people died from this flu.
From a flu.
So, the decade sucked, right? You've had just people are just dying left and right. It's not that much fun. People are going off to England, like maybe the most horrific environment that human beings ever been in these trenches, right? You like wake up next to a corpse that's been there for a month. It's just life isn't fun, right?
Life is grim.
Life is pretty
grim at the moment.
It's bleak, right? It's not a good time. And then all of a sudden, people start developing spots on their faces, and they start turning blue and bleeding and hemorrhaging their mucous membranes.
Ooh. So
Right.
this is the flu that's doing this.
Spanish flu. And like I said, conservatively, 17 million people died all
Worldwide,
over the
hey?
world.
Yeah.
They think, there are lots of different numbers. They think about 1/3 of the whole population was infected.
The population of the world
Of the world.
was infected.
Yeah.
Right. And what was do you know the mortality rate?
Well, 17 million out of, I don't know how many people there were at the time, but
it's got a high mortality rate, hasn't it? As far as flu
it was
go,
unusual in that it killed young adults primarily,
Yeah.
like unlike most diseases which will kill
Weak immune system little
right.
bitches.
It was the exact opposite. So people would be like running out of their houses, bleeding from their eyes.
Fuck.
Right?
And it's not good to have like the most productive members of society being the ones most vulnerable to this disease, is it?
If you were trying to undercut a society, yeah, I would think this is the sort of thing you'd make.
Yeah.
Right? The healthy ones are the ones who get hit.
So it's like it started on a pig farm. What do you?
A pig farm in Kansas.
Okay.
Is the first recorded case, but the Spanish were the ones who were being honest about it. So they got the road to
They got the flag.
paid with good intentions. Yeah, that's why you don't. That's why you keep your mouth shut
How different do you think history would be if it was called the Kansas flu?
with the American flu. Probably very different. Probably very different.
Yeah, just first
Hollywood might never
detected in
take
Spain. Is that why it's the Spanish
No,
flu?
it was first. They first recorded it in Kansas, but I think Spain was at the time they were trying to keep this under wraps, right? And one of the problems was that this is coinciding with a horrific war, right? So if the soldiers get the sick soldiers got sent to hospitals where they spread it, unlike in other environments, right? The sicker you are, the more likely you were to spread it. In this case, because if you were really sick, they're going to send you to a military hospital. And there you're going to spread it to everybody, right? So it just exploded in that way. Whereas normally, if you're sick, you'd stay home. Like you would be less likely to infect others.
Sure. How long did the Spanish flu go on for? Like when?
Off and on for about 3 years.
Okay.
So it takes off worse after the war's over. Yeah,
Yes.
it's soldiers returning.
Soldiers
So it's
come home,
returning, yeah.
and then it just spreads everywhere. So that's just how it caps off. But it gets even better because we also have genocide. Lots and lots of genocide in this decade. It doesn't get better. Save the best for last.
Yeah.
For last. In Turkey alone, we have the Armenian genocide, and I don't care if they never sponsor us in Turkey because this is a genocide. In 1915, at least 100 million Armenians were just basically forced to walk to Syria without food or water. Just pretty much just forced to go.
You just
And
get out.
If you don't make it,
Tough.
So it was designed to. They weren't designed to make it.
The Turks are very touchy about that. I
They
don't
are.
believe they still recognize it as a genocide, do they?
They are, but it's I don't know how you could starve and
Yeah.
it just. What did you think they were gonna do?
No, there's
What
a
was
lot
the
of evidence
alternative?
that it is definitely a
Right,
genocide, and it's the whole forced march thing. But
If you're not, right. If you're not trying to kill them, what are you trying to do? Right? Like that's.
well, of course, yeah. What was the cause of that? Was it like they just wanted to remove the Armenians from their society because
Not-
they
but-
saw them
but
as like enemies within, or
Not
something?
just the Armenians. At the same time, they
Christians, is it?
So they 750,000 Assyrians died, 500,000 Greeks died in a similar period. So
So it's
the
Christians.
The Ottoman Empire was mostly just cleansing it of Christians, but
Yeah.
Christians and other ethnic minorities. Not only that, in I can't pronounce it, Kyrgyzstan,
Mm-hmm.
what's now Kyrgyzstan, the Russians killed about 270,000 Kyrgyz after an uprising, and it's a very small population. There's like 3 million of them.
Oh yeah, that's a huge percentage. Holy shit!
That's like 10 million or 10% of the population. And then, of course, at the time, you also let's not forget, we got Japan committing brutalities across Eastern Asia. We've got colonial powers doing their bad thing all across the world. It's a bad decade, guys. I think.
Yeah.
I feel pretty good about this one.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. What about the good things that happened in this decade? What good things?
Baseball gets big.
I've got like 2. I had to research it. In this decade, we had the creation of Oreos. That's a good thing for the decade.
Take it all back.
Take it all back just for the Oreo.
Is it though? Like Oreos are that popular. I feel like other biscuits don't get the credit they deserve because Oreos are so mainstream. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. Other biscuits.
Oreos
What other
don't
biscuits
get-
exist?
Yeah, biscuits don't get the credit because Oreo's the best.
It's the best.
Is it though?
What's better than an
It's
Oreo?
better. Man, the world has spoken. The world has spoken. Oreos are the best.
And they're here to stay. What about in 1910s was the introduction of air conditioning? The country
Aircon's
we
good.
all live in right now, we'd all be fucked without air
I couldn't
conditioning.
come here without air conditioning. That's true. I wouldn't make it.
Halley's Comet was 1910.
And then when did it come back?
Years later. But this was the first sighting of Halley's Comet was in the 1910s. In the 1910s, not 1910 itself. And apparently they discovered Machu Picchu in the 1910s too. So that's all the research I could find just to like shit on your argument.
So not that many good things happened, right?
I mean, Oreos.
What about Christmas Eve, 1914? That's a heartwarming story, isn't it?
magical time.
I mean, the German and British soldiers all sing carols and have a game of footy. It's lovely, isn't it?
And do you think that's how Eurovision started?
There we go. There we go.
Eurovision. Thank you. 1910s.
So, any final closing arguments for
Final
why
thoughts.
the 1910s was the worst decade?
No. Lots of violence. Things got worse. And then everyone died of the plague.
That's it. Yeah, that sums it up
That's-
pretty
that's to sum it
fucking
up.
succinctly, dude. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Just mass slaughter. And then everyone got sick.
Okay. Well, after mass slaughter, why don't you lighten things up by telling us about the decade, which definitely isn't the worst?
Yeah, so the decade that I've chosen is the most recent decade, the 2010s.
But Matt, hasn't you when did you, okay, how old were you when 2010 happened?
I was in the 9th grade, so maybe 14, 15.
So pretty much your whole fucking adult life was this decade.
Yeah, and I've been miserable since.
And it's the worst. So you're okay, all right.
Just trying to get a little bit lighthearted, Joe, to lift the spirits of the crowd. Because this is going to probably get darker after mine, I imagine. So obviously in the 2010s, we had like a major epidemic. We all know which one I'm talking about, right?
Bird flu?
Ebola.
Ebola was bad.
No, Ebola was in 2014, so it was in this decade, but obviously talking about COVID-19, everyone's locked down for between 6 months to a year and a half. Vietnam, basically 2 years of lockdown.
Yeah.
Terrible. Lots of people died. Lots of people denied it. But Still a shit thing about this decade. We had a reality TV show host become president of the United States of America.
Yeah, that was pretty fucking shit.
Not to isolate or exclude any listeners.
Brexit happened first.
No, we've had an awful time of it the past few years, Britain and America.
So that's
Fucking
actually my next
embarrassing.
point is Brexit happened in the last decade.
You had to win, didn't you? You know what I mean? Like, we did Brexit, and then you were like, we can go one better.
We can do one better.
We are number one. We are number one.
We had the Haiti earthquake, which was devastating. We've had terrorist attacks. We had the Boston Marathon. We had the attacks in France. We've had the London Bridge. There's a shit ton of terrorist attacks that have happened in the 2010s.
That's a good point. General instability.
The general instability. And also the 2010s brought on the rise of ISIS. And Coney 2012.
With the French attack.
Coney. I forgot about Coney.
Was Coney a thing? What the hell was up with Coney? What was that?
So, I mean, from my understanding, they made like a documentary or like an awareness video that became really viral, and they sort of underplayed the severity of the Ugandan situation. So it got criticized heavily because it was more of like like the start of a viral, I don't know how to put it, like a viral
campaign.
It was like
campaign.
a manhunt on it on Coney.
Yeah. But yeah, and then people were donating a shit ton of money and everyone knew about it, but nothing was ever done from it. But yeah, Coney was a thing from this decade. So aside from ISIS, terrorists, and Coney, there's been a shit ton of school shootings in the USA alone. From 2010 to 2020, there have been 630 school shootings. Sandy Hook happened.
That is
in the
fucking
2010s.
unbelievable.
In which country have these school shootings occurred?
Are you saying this defensively as an American? Are you proud of this?
No, I'm not proud of it. I just think some people need context.
I had no idea that it was that common until a few years ago. I just thought it was like, you know, I've seen Bowling for Columbine. I've thought it happened like two or
Sandy
three
Hook.
times, and it was obviously a big fucking deal because it should be a big deal.
Yeah.
And then people were like, no, this happens like every month, and I'm like,
Regularly.
what? And it does.
So I've actually got
How
the
many?
numbers
Sorry,
here.
how many did you just say?
630 in the US alone from 2010 to 2020. And these are the numbers
Oh my
going. So I'm going to
God.
just list the numbers going from
Over
2010
60,
to 2020. So 2010, 15, 2011, 16, 2013, 20, 2014, 34, 2015, 46, 2016, 40, 2017, 50, 2018, 58. 2019, 118, 2020, 119. And there's been more in the last 2 years, but that doesn't count as my decade, so I've chosen to exclude those.
I can't comprehend that. I can't begin to try and understand why that happens.
People have access to guns in America. It's that simple.
It's not that simple though.
It is
There's
that
got to be
simple.
more to it than that.
What
People
what
have
else are you
access to
missing?
guns in other places.
Do they? Not to the same
Yeah,
extent?
there's liberal gun laws in other countries. There is. I don't know if it's quite as liberal. I know it's pretty mad in America, and you can go and, like, the most recent one, he bought it on his 18th birthday and stuff like that. That's fucking insane. I don't know if it's like that, but it's got to be more to it than that. There's got to be more to it than I can walk in. Do you think that would, if they made the gun laws that relaxed in every country in the world, that have that many people going into schools and shooting them up? I'm not trying to get at America.
I mean, no, I
but
do
there's
think
something.
I do think it is a symptom of a sick society. I think men in particular are underserved emotionally and they don't know what. I think a lot of people are hopeless.
Yeah.
I think this is what you get. I think you get really fucked up, sick, sad men that don't know what else to do. Not to justify their actions in any way or like give them any sort of like, obviously that's inexcusable actions, but I think that's how you get it.
Seems like the wrong word to put to it, but is it like a craze, a trend among messed up people? It's like this. If you're messed up and suicidal, this is what you do. It goes up exponentially there. It goes to like
it goes
100
from
and something.
15 in 2010 up to 119 in 2020.
I think that's more because of our president than trends like that. But I have read before that it is more normalized now, right? It is more normalized than it used to be, right? It used to be like almost inconceivable, and now it's not inconceivable in the least, right? So yeah, in that sense, it has gotten more prevalent because it is more normalized. Went from being something unthinkable to like it could happen anytime.
It could happen
Yeah,
anytime.
yeah.
Like where people or schools have metal detectors
Not just
as
not
you
just-
walk in.
Not just schools though. Like it can happen. I mean, it happens in offices. It happens in concerts.
Yeah.
Oh, so does it? Yeah, it's not just a school thing. They will go like
Oh, not at all.
it's
Why
common
would
to
they-
go
why
into
would they-
public.
Why would they stop?
Well, because it's
sir,
the
you're in a
most
supermarket.
horrific.
I can't murder you in cold blood.
No,
This is
no,
the one was-
because it's the most horrific thing you can do, though.
Yeah.
That's why it
No,
seems to me like it's.
In Buffalo a few weeks ago, it was in a supermarket.
Yeah.
I mean, the one from a couple of years ago when The Dark Knight was released and he showed up the
Shot
cinema.
the cinema in Colorado, in Vegas
Yeah.
at a concert. The guy popping up people from his
from his rooftop, right?
I think it was hotel window or something like that.
Yeah, some higher place, and he was just taking them out one
just
by one.
because he can.
There was the opioid epidemic in the States where about, what did they say, 70,000 Americans died from overdosing in 2017 alone.
Is this the worst decade in the world or the worst decade in the United States?
I mean, America is basically the world. So
You said it, not me.
the 2010s was the rise of cancel culture. You guys know what cancel culture is?
Yeah, some fucking prick took us off YouTube today.
Yeah, well, basically, he did a copyright claim for royalty-free music.
He didn't cancel us.
Oh, he's trying to. He's actively
Look,
trying
I don't
to.
understand these things, and I think he cancelled us. That's how I felt.
So cancel culture is a form of ostracism in which someone is thrust out of social or professional circles. Right? So there's a lot of people that have been like rightly cancelled, I suppose. You got the Cosbys, the Spaceys.
I mean, Louis C.K. did masturbate in front of a bunch of women who didn't want him to do
Yeah,
it.
he did, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's-
That's pretty bad.
Stand-up's really good, though,
But
isn't it?
he's making a comeback, so I guess you can come back from cancel culture.
The only people who said they couldn't come back, that they were, I feel like it's the people who are canceled that make it out to be the death sentence that it is not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like only Dave Chappelle can whine about being canceled on his Netflix special. You know what I mean? How canceled are you?
Yeah.
You're on
Yeah.
your Netflix special.
Yeah, you're not that cancelled. There's obviously a lot of people that have been wrongly cancelled. Like you have Hayden Christensen. Do you guys know who that is?
Was he Anakin?
He was Anakin Skywalker, and he
Yeah.
was cancelled just because he was in a movie people don't like. But as a person, as an actor, he got cancelled, and his career was like thrust
so
into
sad.
shit
That's so sad.
just because he happened to be in a bad movie because people didn't like his portrayal of Anakin Skywalker.
It's not his fault. George Lucas writes terrible dialogue.
Cancel culture's associated with, like, being offensive, isn't it? No.
It's not that. It's just because we have such such prolific access to social media, and even like people that never had a voice in the past have a voice now, and maybe people that shouldn't have a voice now, and they have a lot of influence, and they can just choose, I don't like this, get rid of.
What kind of people shouldn't have a voice, Matt? What do you think, Maddie? Who shouldn't have a voice?
Tories,
Tories, okay, good one, yeah.
Liverpool supporters.
Liverpool supporters.
behave yourself.
Can you guys think of any other people that were unfairly cancelled?
Let's see who was unfairly canceled.
Tiger Woods? He's just a sex addict.
Look, rich athletes have been having sex with beautiful women that they're not married to for a very long time.
Yeah. It's not new, is it?
It's like Tiger Woods he didn't do anything original.
Yeah, we didn't have to fucking stretch too hard for
Yeah,
that
like
one.
poor Tiger gets the shoe thrown at him.
Yep. Rich, good-looking, famous
Like,
athlete.
Oh wow, you're having sex with someone you shouldn't?
Yeah.
As a famous man? Like, no way.
How dare he?
How dare you?
Next point, the rise of social media addiction, 2010s. We don't communicate anymore, guys. The fact that we're here in a room together is astounding.
It is a theme that you hate the modern world, though, despite being, like, half a robot. The way you're just in tune with tech.
If you can't beat him, join him. I'm going to take him down from the inside.
You will lead the counter-tech revolution, to be fair.
Because I'll be the most tech savvy. Thank you. I like that. You've inspired something in me. The 2010s also brought on science deniers. So we have anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, climate change deniers. There's a comedian that said, Michelle Wolf, she said, in high school, if you didn't believe in science, it was called failing. And now we just have a bunch of people that, no, I know better. My Facebook tells me I know better. Science is wrong.
Yeah, your facts are wrong and my opinions are right.
And some noticeable deaths in the 2010s. Mandela died.
When Nelson Mandela died, I was like, how many good people are left? Like, how many, you know?
That's it. Just
That's it. That was the last
That was the
one.
last one. Like, everyone else is just a prick.
everyone go home.
I mean-
no more deaths, no one cares.
Show's over, boys.
That's it. The last good one's gone.
Final reason: the 2010s are probably the worst decade. Liverpool won the Premier League in the 2019-2020
And Daddy's
season.
never
Yeah,
gonna shut up about it.
Fucking dead.
And
And
that-
the Champions League.
Well, that's just unfortunate.
So I'm going to talk about the 1340s. Now, the 1340s were a fucked up time. I'll get into the plague first. People, obviously now with COVID, even though we understand it better with what's going on, there's still mass hysteria,
Mm.
people coming out with crazy
A
stuff.
lot of misinformation.
Exactly. Now imagine in the 1340s, a virus has popped up somewhere in Asia. We still don't know where, either Central Asia or East Asia.
We don't know where still.
It's contested. It was either Central Asia or East Asia. But we know it came from Asia into Europe and then went into North Africa as well. And it popped up around 1346. And then basically it came into port towns from traders and just basically bringing the plague to Europe. So the conservative estimations are that 75 million died. And the higher estimations are that 200 million people died. Now, this is at a time when
200
populations are much smaller.
World.
Yeah, so Asia, Europe, and North Africa is where this hit. At the time, people literally thought the world was ending. And they didn't understand what was going on.
Were there symptoms for the Black Plague? Like, what were the, you know?
They get these, like, big, what would you even call them? Like
Boils?
these,
Pustules.
yeah, boils, yeah, these huge boils on the face.
All over the body, right?
Yeah, all over the body, sorry, yeah. But yeah, I think the main symptom that you hear spoken about is the big boils coming
Sure.
all over the body. And that alone, and there's other reasons why the 1340s was a shit decade, and I'll get into them, but that alone for me is the worst time ever to be alive. The 1340s was a very, very cold decade.
Mm.
Just
It
a
was
little bit
part
chilly.
of a mini ice age. Yeah, so the northern hemisphere was fucking cold. So it was pretty shit anyway. And it seems to be right across the northern hemisphere. So even in North America, there's declining harvests, cultures around the Mississippi, cities like Cahokia, and there's a few others. They suffer at this time. In China, before the plague sets in, the Yuan dynasty, I think it is the main dynasty, they're suffering again because of declining harvest due to climate, and that causes political unrest, which eventually brings down that dynasty. There's a civil war going on in Byzantium. There's the Mongol states all over Asia are like declining at this time, and there's civil wars. Shit's going off. All right, shit's going off.
Shit's
I'm not an
going off.
expert. I'm not an expert. Don't ask me about the intricacies of the Byzantine civil war, but it happened.
In your opinion, who did you want to win?
I mean, the good guys.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, we
Yeah.
always root for the good guys.
Yeah.
Always root for the good.
Always
guys.
root for the good guys. A lot of us 1340s sounds like just natural selection. That's all nature happening. This is all. This
Wow.
is not.
You're really going to go
man-made.
there, Matt? Fucking hell.
Darwinism at its finest, you know, like the strongest survive. At least with like the 1910s, it was just humans being shit. This is just nature being shit for the most part.
Yeah, being very shit. I mean, that's quite a callous way to approach things, Matt.
So
You know, populations
Humans are a
In
scourge.
populations in Europe in 1300, they didn't get back to that level until 1700. That's how much the Black Plague fucked Europe.
Mother Earth was just trying to do what she does best, man.
but we can argue. I know we haven't taken this track before, but if let's open it up and say, okay, what about the future benefits from this decade, right?
Yeah.
If we decided we haven't opened that door,
Yeah.
and if we do, then there's lots of benefits from the plague. Right?
You know, we reduced what's it called? Your global footprint.
Global
you know,
footprint, yeah.
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 Your-
Global warming could be way worse right now. if that
Absolutely. No,
happened.
if we didn't decimate millions of people, you know, who knows where we would have been.
I'm not saying it would have happened, but it might have benefited, improved things.
See, a few hundred years as a nice way of making death seem a little bit more acceptable to people, doesn't it? Like if this happened 100 years ago, we wouldn't just be joking about that. We wouldn't just be like, oh, it was all right that 200 million people died. It made global warming's not as bad. 700 years has a way of doing that to people, doesn't it? I don't know if we'd be saying that if this was a bit more recent.
How did they count the 200 million people that died? Like, where did they track that?
Oh, I don't fucking know, Matt. I don't fucking know.
But look, we do have the benefit of hindsight with this one. This one we do. We would love to throw out hindsight, but we can't throw it out because we haven't.
Look, I in terms of the Black Death, like imagining the scene is difficult to me. It's
Right,
like
it's hard to imagine.
it's the closest thing to like a post-apocalypse
Yeah.
that you can possibly imagine. Half of the people around you are dead or dying.
Yeah.
And you don't really understand why. And apparently a major problem at this time as well, which makes perfect sense, is scapegoating. So again, we scapegoated people for COVID, and we understand that bacteria is, got nothing to do with like who you are.
Right.
But at the time, people didn't know that. So what lots of different communities, societies experienced at this time was fucking grim. According to Dan Carlin, what the Jews went through is second only to the Holocaust, because there was a massive rumour in Europe at the time that the whole reason for this was that Jewish people were poisoning wells.
Sure.
And people took it out on them. And they're not the only example of that. There's a lot of examples of, if you have a minority in a certain community, people generally blame them for it because they didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Right. You got to do something at this point. Like, what do you? I can understand that mindset. Like,
And you don't have the science to prove why what's
desperate.
happening is happening.
We are desperate. This is the last thing I want to do, but if this is
The easiest thing to do is just blame someone else,
Right.
I guess.
We've tried everything else.
And society hasn't changed that much since.
No, not at all.
No one wants to take responsibility for anything.
And can you imagine COVID had like a 50% fatality rate and everyone was fucking dying. What would the living do? You wouldn't respect rules, would you?
What's the point?
Exactly. You wouldn't respect convention. So you wouldn't respect law and order and stuff like that. So imagine what people were doing.
We're all going to die anyway.
Yeah, it's
The world's
fucking anarchy.
ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a messed up time to be alive. So I think with the 1340s, it's look, it starts off we're in a mini ice age. Asia, Europe, North Africa, North America, it's really fucking cold. Harvests are shit. There's famine in lots of different places. As a result, you've got political unrest in lots of different places across the world. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
And then in 1346, you get these basically death ships arriving in ports in Europe. Like people, traders have been in Asia and then they pick up the plague, travel back to Europe. It's obviously spreading and infecting people on the ship, and then they're just turning up at ports with just like most of the passengers dead.
Yeah.
And then just spreading this into the continent. And then it gets really fucking grim.
It gets a lot darker after that. Fuck.
I think the 1340s is the worst decade in history.
How long, according to the Bible, has the Earth been around? Did the 1300s even exist back then?
I don't think it ever happened. It never happened.
Fake news.
Can you prove it happened?
Can you prove it happened? And you see, that's a problem with the 2010s. Clickbait. We just know what the internet tells us. Who knows what an encyclopedia is? Because cell phones are the worst. Go vote up cell phones.
Smartphones.
Smartphones.
But in the 1340s, it was an act of, dare I say, God. It was nature. Nothing you can do about that. It couldn't have been avoided. That's just like, you wake up and it's raining. That sucks. You know what I mean?
You wake up and there's Black Death.
That's a bummer. That's a real bummer, but we all got to live with it, right? The 1910s was avoidable human error over and over and over again. We saw the shit and we stepped in it.
I agree with you on that. That doesn't make it worse for the people who live through it, though. Like, the experience itself is not made worse by that. I do get that's like an extra kick in the teeth that this was human choices.
Self-inflicted.
Do you know what the average life expectancy was in the 1340s? Like, were you going to die at a young age anyway?
I mean, I don't know if that makes it okay, Matt.
Just saying, it was like if I'm gonna die at 25, but then I'm gonna die at 27 from the Black Plague.
By 1350, it was 30 to 35 years. 1 in 5 children.
Is that an average though, taking into account the Black Death? Because that is too low.
I imagine so.
That's too low.
John, you'd be dead by now.
Definitely. Whatever genetics got me through now, like I would love to know what it was. Actually, I would love to know what part of my gene pool like let me survive until this point, because I can't fucking figure it out. I don't get it. You know what I mean?
I mean, anyone can survive nowadays, can't they? That's why the 2010s aren't that bad.
So you go to you get the Black Death for. I mean, I'm not. It would be terrible. It would be horrible. I'm not sure. But you suffer the Black Death sweeps through your town. A third of the people you know and love die within 6 months, or you're in the fucking on the plains of France for 2 years.
Or your favorite comedians being cancelled.
Yeah, dude, how bad? How bad is that shit? Or you get locked in your house, you can't leave, dude. You get a little bit of sadness. Being sad is a fucking epidemic, dude.
No, it's right. Yours is definitely the worst.
Thank you. I've always wanted to hear you say that.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. And if you got any thoughts or questions, please let us know.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Worst of the Worst Pod, and on Twitter at Worst of Worst Pod. Alternatively, you can send us an email at worstoftheworstpod@gmail.com. We're also on TikTok. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and anywhere podcasts are played.